The Gates of Camino.
Ooh, baby, where'd you get that style? And the pretty red lips, and the sunny smile. Hello. When you start to dance, your whole hips and dance. Hello. Shaking up and down. Shake a little here, shake a little there. When you got the boys going to town on the little baby, where'd you get that style? And the pretty red lips.
All right, little boy, just stand over there. Oh, you're on first.
Oh, but my dear sir, he's not ready.
He's not ready.
Besides, my son is too much of an artist to open a show.
Oh, he's too much of an artist to open the show.
Yeah. Why don't you put on a sheep herders? Then fighting word, partner. We're cowboys from the mountain. Huh, from the drugstore.
Oh, come now, son. Don't do those things.
All right, boys, follow me. Ladies and gentlemen, the first number on our amateur weekly program will be Tom and Jerry, the Nevada Nightingales.
Arizona.
The Arizona Nightingales. Oh!
She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming around the mountain. She'll be coming around the mountain. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. We will all go to meet her when she comes. We will all go to meet her when she comes. We will all go to meet her. We will all go to meet her. We will all go to meet her when she comes.
Well, is Barrymore ready yet?
Not quite.
Don't rush me, big boy.
Listen, one more peep out of you, and you don't go on at all.
Say that again.
One more peep out of you, and you don't go on.
Peep, peep.
Oh, pay no attention to him. That's part of his act.
What's going on, everyone? I wanted to do some type of, episode or whatever, hanging by myself. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to talk about. I'm process of moving, so sometimes I don't really have the setup to interview anybody or talk to one of the usual people. So, I'm just kind of here figuring out what I wanted to talk about. So basically what happened the other day, I was watching some old Little Rascals and I was thinking about Alfalfa, Carl Switzer, and I started looking up some stuff on him. And anyway, so I was going to talk about him for a little bit. I thought he was an interesting character. I always think the child stars from back then, the life they lived and everything has to be just crazy. It has to be super crazy. But I put down some facts here about good old Alfalfa, and I just wanted to talk about him a bit here. So he was born on August 7th, 1927 in Illinois. So he was the son of like a businessman and teacher. So he had a pretty good upbringing. He did have he's kind of like a performing child. Him and his brother, they were singers and actors, and his brother's name was Harold. And they were actually famous in their hometown of Paris, Illinois. And they used to do little musical performances and stuff, and they both sang and danced along with it and everything. So it was pretty cool to, seeing pictures of them when they're younger and all that. So for a while, him and his brother are, just little local celebs. And then his family comes out to visit. And they're at the Hal Roach Studios, 1934. And then the story is that they broke into an impromptu performance while they're in, I don't know if they were in the commissary or whatever, and they just started kind of doing their little thing. Hal Roach was present there that day, and then he signed them.
My name is Sexy True Fun Way, back in over Vermont, and everything's
That's what they say. I don't know if it was that easy, but back then, you never know, 1934. So he supposedly signed them at that moment, and then that was it. So his big break, I mean, he may have done a couple little things first, but his big break is he joins the Our Gang group, the series, and ended up becoming the Little Rascals, if anyone doesn't know that. But it was always called Our Gang until it was revived. But 1935, the very next year, he's in Our Gang, and he gets the name Alfalfa is given to him, and he has, the quirky hairstyle and the funny way of singing. And he was a standout on the show pretty much instantly, where his brother Harold ended up becoming more of a kind of just background for everybody. So it definitely worked out more for Carl than Harold, but that's what happened after they, when they came out and got signed pretty much quickly. And as Alfalfa, Switzer became, more recognizable, probably the most recognizable face on the show. And just with that high-pitched voice and all the goofy stuff, he was literally the comic relief. And at that time, that was, the main thing. And so, if you've ever seen any of the shows, it's just, he had Darla was his crush, and he was always, trying to get her. So, it was kind of fun, watching them. But he appeared in a bunch of the Our Gang shorts, and until the series ended, and it ended in 1944. And that was basically his whole legacy. His 35 to 44 is his pop culture status, Alfalfa. So in 1944 is when he establishes his status, ends in that, and that's what he's known for pretty much for the rest of his life to this day is Alfalfa. And it was even, and it started pretty quickly for him. He jumped on the show in 35, and then by the end of 37, the series real star at the time was Spanky, George McFarlane, and he was the most popular one. But by the end of 37, it was literally all Alfalfa at that point. The boys all got along pretty well. Supposedly the parents did not. Probably Spanky and Carl's Alfalfa's parents probably didn't get along too well, but I was reading up that the fathers argued a lot over the son's screen times and salaries and so forth. But I mean, I thought Little Rascal Show, I mean, there are certain parts, there are certain parts that are a little, dated, but all in all, it's really like a kind of a fun little, setup, and, watching at least parts of episodes can be kind of funny and everything still. I don't know if it's because I'm older, but I certainly don't put them on the same thing for me as like, Three Stooges or Lauren Hardy. I mean, even Abbott and Costello, I guess. I mean, it's a kid's show or whatever, but it really gets more interesting. For me, it gets more interesting for Carl Switzer as he transitioned into adult life. So after Our Gang, he kind of struggled getting acting work. Obviously, his face is changing. He looks different as an adult. He's not a cute little kid anymore. He's kind of a strange looking, adult a little bit. So he's worked on various shows, and he was even a horse trainer for a while too in the 50s, and just did what he could do to make money. And he just did not get a lot of acting work, but he did. You're going to give him anything after Our Gang. His biggest role he got was in It's a Wonderful Life in 1946. So he was in that, and bunch of littler stuff as well, but nothing reached the level of It's a Wonderful Life. So, I mean, he did get that, so that's kind of cool. So, but weird things were happening. He was definitely living a shady life. I was also reading on January 26th, 1958, he was getting into his car right outside of a bar in Studio City, and a bullet smashes through his window and actually, I think it struck him in his arm. So they never caught the gunman. And then they just got away with it. So somebody, I don't know if anyone was ever after him or he was dealing in something, but he did have one attempt on his life before anything else ever happened. And then later in that December, Switzer was arrested at the Sequoia National Forest, and he was cutting down pine trees he intended to illegally sell for Christmas trees. So I don't know. He was doing all these little scams, and he was sentenced to probation, and he had to pay a fine. And so, I mean, the life he lived was certainly before the end came, it was, I don't know, it's nuts. It's just nuts if you think about it. Like, just reading stuff on him, and just, I don't know, it's pretty wild. But what really got me into him, to be honest, is so since I lived out here in LA, I've lived all over the place. And I've had all these little different places I've stayed for a while at first. And for a couple years, maybe about 10 years ago or so, but for about 2 years span, I was living in Mission Hills. I had this little loft guest house I was living in Mission Hills, and it was on Columbus Avenue in Mission Hills. I was always fascinated living there because directly across the street, maybe one house over, across the street, one house over, was the house where it all came to an end for Carl Switzer. And he was killed back on January 21st, 1959, when he was 31 years old. It was over an altercation about a dog. It's just crazy, the whole story. But basically, in a gist though, Switzer agreed to train a hunting dog. It was I'm not even sure exactly what kind of dog it is. It was like a coonhound or something like that. So it was the 50s. And he's training a dog for a fella named Bud Stilts. So those two were longtime friends, and sometimes they were in business dealings together. I don't really know what, but Switzer met him when he was working for Roy Rogers on different like productions and stuff on his movie ranch. So while in Switzer's possession, though, the dog runs off and chased after a bear. So basically, Switzer's looking for the dog, and Bud Stilts learns about the disappearance, and he wasn't really. And they say he was angry right towards Switzer. He didn't really listen to what the reason was or whatever. He just instantly was demanding that he gives him the dog or money right away. I don't know how much he cared about the dog, if he's asking for the value of the dog or whatever, but he wasn't able to pay for the dog. So at the time, Switzer took out ads in the newspaper and was trying to find the dog. He really was trying to find it. I don't think he did anything wrong with it or anything, but eventually the dog was located and brought to a bar, where Switzer was working. So the rescuer was rewarded $35 in cash, and I guess they said $35 in cash and $15 in alcoholic beverages. So the loss of $50, I guess Switzer was pissed off about it. He was pissed that he had to pay $50 for the reward money. And then afterwards, he had a conversation with his 37-year-old photographer friend, Jack Pyatt. And those two were talking, and they decided that it should be Bud Stilts who reimbursed Switzer for the fee. So then he went to Stilts' house, and that's whenever. So the two both went to Stilts' house. So I believe it was Jack Pyatt. I don't know how you say his name. Him and Carl Switzer. They went over to Stilts' home, which is the house in Mission Hills. It's right across the street where I used to live. So Stilts lived there with his wife, and they had stepchildren. And so anyways, Alfalfa and Pyatt get there, and they try to demand money from Bud Stilts. The accounts actually get a little bit different there if you read up on different pages from whether it be Wikipedia or just reading different stuff online. But it's definitely gets a little bit different points of view at that moment. But Stilts was struck in the head, on the side of the head with like a clock. Goes into his room and retrieves a .38 caliber revolver. They wrestled for it, struggled. The charge goes off. It almost hit his stepson, Stilts' stepson. So then this is where all the accounts get a little bit different. Stilts is saying, was saying that Switzer was like banged in, said like, I'm going to kick the door in and all everything. So after the gun went off, almost shooting the stepson, Switzer says, according to Stilts, Switzer threatened, he grabbed a knife and he said, "I'm going to kill you." So that's what Stilts is saying. Bud Stilts said Alfalfa grabs a knife and says, "I'm going to kill you." That's when Bud Stilts then fires a shot and shoots Switzer in the groin and ends up damaging an artery and started having massive bleeding. So that's actually where he got shot in the groin. He didn't get shot in the chest or anything, which is what a lot of people thought. That's what I thought he got shot. But it was in the groin, and he was pronounced dead that evening in the hospital. He was 31. So Tom Corrigan, who's a stepson, his account is a little bit different than his stepfather's. This is what I read. Actually, I read this part on Wikipedia, where he told investigators that, actually I wrote this out. He told investigators that Stilts shot Switzer as he and Pyatt were leaving. So after the gun, according to Bud Stilts' stepson, after the gun accidentally went off is when Switzer turns to Pyatt and said, they need to get out of there. And that's whenever the two were heading to the door. And that's supposedly when Stilts, shot. But, Tom Corrigan, the stepson, he was never called to testify at the coroner's inquest or anything like that. Stilts' testimony was just taken as word. And despite all the physical evidence that was there was never any type of conviction or anything like that. And tough to say really what happened. Who really knows, regardless, they had some type of altercation, ended in a gunshot. I don't know whether they're walking out the door when it happened or not, that's, whatever. But that's basically, the Carl Switzer Alfalfa story. His legacy really is, our gang. He's buried at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. He actually, he died on the same day as Cecil B. DeMille. So that's why there wasn't a lot of talk about him in the papers or anything at the time. So he actually even had kind of anticlimactic, death. But I definitely encourage, if you've never seen any Our Gang episodes, it is kind of fun watching. Again, it's dated, so be warned. But it's a funny show. It's fun to watch for what it is back then. Carl Switzer, R.I.P. Not a bad life, at least, for a few years. So
people don't even know about, even though his life ended nearly 40 years ago. But is Alfalfa still around? That's what some think. Here's tonight's Hollywood mystery. It happened in this house down this hallway where Rosa Davis says he died.
Bullet hole is right here.
Carl Switzer was killed when a bullet tore through his stomach. A coroner's report called the shooting justifiable homicide. But what led up to this doorway and his death on January 21st, 1959, actually began 24 years earlier.
Say, mister, where's the express office?
Inside.
When a skinny kid with a straight-up colic and a scratchy voice became an overnight star. Carl Alfalfa Switzer was the sweet, innocent, good kid in Hal Roach's Our Gang series. But off-screen, his closest friend, Tommy Butch Bond, says Alfalfa was anything but sweet.
If he liked you, he loved you. If he didn't like you, he hated you. And that's the way he was, that he didn't like very many people. Unfortunately, his short temper, and he did have one, led to his demise.
That demise began when the Our Gang series ended. Alfalfa outgrew his role and was cut from the series. He wasn't a cute child star anymore. He was a struggling actor, landing only bit parts.
The Snakebite Saloon. Wow.
He tried to make a living tending bar and acting as a hunting guide, and on the night he walked up to this Los Angeles house, his anger was raging. Carl Alfalfa Switzer was about to die over a mere $50.
He died by selling one of his bloodhounds to some guy for $50. The guy didn't pay him. So he went to the guy's house to collect the money, and the guy looked at him and says, "Take a hike." And Alfie pulled a knife. The guy pulled a gun and DOA.
Died over a dog.
Yeah.
On January 22nd, 1959, even news of Alfalfa's slaying did not put him back in the headlines.
Dead at 77, Cecil B. DeMille.
That morning, the world was learning of the death of famed director Cecil B. DeMille. Switzer's death was barely noticed. For many years, his fans didn't even know he was gone. Maybe that's why Rosa Davis believes he still comes back to her house, still searching for the $50 that was never repaid.
But seriously, there's been no sightings of Alfalfa.
No, but he does strange things. He moves things from one place to another and slams doors when the wind isn't blowing.
Ironically, if he would have lived, Alfalfa would have found true success. The Our Gang series is now bigger in reruns than it ever was during its heyday. That $50 kept Carl Alfalfa Switzer from finding out just how big he would become.
I would just love to have him back again to say, look what people think of us today. Aren't you happy? Doesn't that make you proud that we did something that people are going to remember forever?
I'm in the mood for love.
Tommy Bond tells me Alfalfa actually thought he had a good voice. Didn't realize everyone was laughing at that scratchy sound until long after the series was underway. That voice continues to sell millions of copies of Little Rascals episodes on video.
We'll never forget it. No, never forget it.